The world is shifting, and this time, the change is irreversible. For nearly 8 decades, one nation towered above all others, commanding the global stage, shaping the rules, and defining what progress meant. But today, that dominance is slipping. The winds of power are blowing east and south. Africa, India, China, and Russia have joined hands to bring balance to a world long ruled by one voice. The unipolar era is ending, and a new multipolar dawn is breaking. Welcome to Iazicho Africa, where we reveal the real power moves shaping our planet. In this episode, we uncover how 4 regions, each with its own story of struggle, innovation, and pride, are uniting to end U.S. global dominance and build a fairer world order. This isn't fantasy. It's happening right now, in trade deals, in infrastructure projects, in diplomatic corridors, and in the hearts of billions who are tired of inequality. For decades, the U.S. dollar ruled the markets, its military ruled the seas, and its politics ruled perception. But the empire's glow is fading. While America spent trillions on wars, others spent trillions on building. While Washington tried to police the planet, Asia and Africa quietly built partnerships, pipelines, and production networks. And now, those efforts are merging into something unstoppable, a new world system led not by one superpower, but by cooperation among equals. Let's start with the root of it all, why the unipolar order is collapsing and how Africa, India, China, and Russia are rewriting the story of the 21st century. Africa, the birthplace of civilization, the land of unmatched potential, and now, the beating heart of the multipolar revolution. For generations, the continent was portrayed as dependent, waiting for aid from the West. But that narrative has collapsed. Today's Africa is young, confident, connected, and unafraid to choose its own partners. Across Lagos, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Johannesburg, and Accra, new alliances are forming. Africa has realized that its wealth in minerals, energy, and human capital gives it power, real, global power. And for the first time in centuries, African nations are using that leverage not to beg, but to bargain. Western influence still lingers, but its grip is loosening. The old model of extraction and exploitation, where resources left the continent while poverty stayed behind, is being replaced by partnerships built on mutual benefit. Africa is no longer asking for help. It's negotiating from strength. Enter China, India, and Russia. Each has approached Africa not with charity, but with opportunity. China, through its Belt and Road Initiative, has invested over $1 trillion in infrastructure, building roads that connect landlocked nations to the sea, power plants that light up entire regions, and industrial zones that are transforming local economies. The Mombasa-Nairobi Railway in Kenya, Ethiopia's new industrial parks, and Nigeria's free trade zones are all part of this new web of cooperation. Critics in the West call it debt diplomacy, but Africans on the ground see results: trains that run, factories that employ, and ports that trade. For the first time, development is tangible. India, too, has deepened its footprint. Through technology, pharmaceuticals, and education, it has built soft power that resonates with Africa's youth. India, Africa trade has crossed $100 billion annually, and digital partnerships are flourishing, from mobile banking in Kenya to telemedicine in Ghana. Indian tech firms are training a generation of African coders who will soon power the digital economies of both continents. Then there's Russia, stepping back into Africa with a new strategy: energy, agriculture, and defense cooperation. Russian companies are working in mining and nuclear energy, while Moscow supplies affordable wheat and fertilizers. It's not charity, it's commerce, built on trust. Together, these relationships are empowering Africa to stand tall. Instead of one-sided deals, African leaders are now comparing offers, demanding better terms, and forming regional blocs that speak with one voice. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, unites over 1.3 billion people in a single market worth trillions of dollars. That's not dependence, that's power. And the world is taking notice. When African nations walked into the 2023 BRICS summit, they didn't come as observers. They came as architects of the future. South Africa hosted the summit. Egypt and Ethiopia joined the bloc, and others signaled interest. The message was clear: Africa is not a playground. It's a pillar of the new order. For decades, the West told Africa what was possible. Now Africa is showing the world what's inevitable. Its minerals will power electric cars. Its young innovators will drive global tech. Its farms will feed new economies. And as it partners with Asia's giants, Africa becomes the bridge, linking the resources of the South to the industries of the East. This is not the Africa of yesterday. This is the Africa of tomorrow, confident, connected, and crucial to the balance of global power. And that's why every major capital, from Washington to Beijing, is watching the continent's next move. India stands at the crossroads of past empires and future possibilities. For decades, it balanced carefully between superpowers, but now it is stepping out with its own independent vision, a world led not by confrontation, but by cooperation. New Delhi has watched how Western sanctions and pressure can paralyze nations. Its response has been to diversify, building ties across Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, and keeping channels open with both Washington and Moscow. This is strategic neutrality with purpose, to give the global South a voice. India's relationship with Africa has grown from cultural sympathy into economic power. Trade volumes now exceed $100 billion annually. Indian companies invest in renewable energy, IT, education, and healthcare across the continent. From solar parks in Mozambique to hospitals in Nigeria, Indian innovation is powering inclusive growth. At the same time, India is re-engineering global finance. It champions local currency trade and digital payment systems that bypass the dominance of the U.S. dollar. Its rupee and UPI systems are expanding abroad, offering real alternatives for emerging economies. This digital diplomacy, cheap, secure, and independent, embodies the multipolar spirit, empowering others without enslaving them to debt. India's Prime Minister calls it partnership without paternalism. The message resonates deeply across Africa. Let us grow together, not under one another. If India provides the software of the multipolar order, China builds its hardware. Over the last 40 years, China has achieved what no nation in modern history has done, lifting nearly 1 billion people out of poverty and turning itself into the world's factory, financier, and innovator. Now Beijing is exporting that development model abroad through the Belt and Road Initiative. It's more than ports and railways. It's a vision of interconnected prosperity. In Africa alone, China has financed or built over 6,000 kilometers of railway, 6,000 kilometers of highways, dozens of power stations, and thousands of schools and hospitals. Western analysts call it debt trap diplomacy, but the results speak louder than rhetoric. Entire regions once isolated are now linked to global markets. Goods that took weeks to move now take days. Power blackouts are giving way to electrified cities. China's strength lies in consistency. While Western policies shift with every election, Beijing thinks in decades. Its focus on mutual infrastructure, technology transfer, and long-term resource partnerships makes it a reliable partner for the global South. Moreover, China is redefining technology leadership. From 5G networks to renewable energy, from electric vehicles to artificial intelligence, Beijing is no longer a follower, it's a pace setter. And crucially, it's sharing that progress. African engineers train in Chinese universities. African entrepreneurs source components from Shenzhen instead of Silicon Valley. The flow of ideas is two-way, not one-sided. The world often portrays India and China as rivals. And yes, there are border tensions and political differences. But the deeper reality is economic interdependence. Together, they account for more than 1/3 of humanity, and both understand that a stable multipolar world benefits them far more than endless rivalry. Through forums like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, New Delhi and Beijing find common ground: currency reform, digital connectivity, and a fairer voice for developing nations in global governance. Their competition is healthy, it drives innovation. Their cooperation is powerful, it reshapes systems. And both now look to Africa as the partner that can transform this vision into reality. When India's pharmaceuticals meet Africa's markets, and China's factories meet Africa's minerals, a self-sustaining triangle emerges, one that doesn't need Western approval or loans. That triangle, Asia's innovation, Africa's resources, and shared ambition, is the real foundation of the multipolar future. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia was written off by many Western analysts, a wounded giant, they said, forever trapped in the shadows of its past. But history has its surprises. Under pressure from Western sanctions, Russia has rebuilt itself, not as a subordinate of the West, but as the vanguard of resistance to Western dominance. Russia's modern strategy is rooted in one word: sovereignty. It believes every nation, big or small, has the right to control its own destiny, its currency, its borders, its trade, and its alliances. That philosophy resonates deeply across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, regions that have endured centuries of external interference. In recent years, Moscow has pivoted to Africa not as a donor, but as a partner. Russian companies are investing in energy exploration, nuclear technology, fertilizers, and agriculture. When African farmers struggled with wheat shortages due to global conflicts, Russia stepped in, offering grain at discounted prices, even donating shipments to poorer nations. That's not geopolitics, it's goodwill. In security, Russia provides training and equipment to nations seeking independence from Western military aid. The principle is simple: defend your land on your own terms. Unlike the U.S., which often attaches political conditions to arms deals, Russia deals in respect and realism. It understands that African and Asian nations want peace through strength, not dependence through aid. And perhaps most importantly, Russia is helping the global South escape the dollar trap. Sanctions have pushed Moscow to trade in local currencies, gold, and digital assets, creating pathways for other countries to follow. What began as a necessity has become a global experiment in financial freedom. When Russia joined hands with China, India, and South Africa in the BRICS alliance, the world began to notice. This was no longer a symbolic club. It was a powerhouse representing over 40% of humanity and nearly a third of global GDP. BRICS, once just an acronym, has become the heartbeat of the multipolar movement. Its core idea is simple but revolutionary. The world should not revolve around one capital, one currency, or one ideology. Over time, BRICS has evolved from a dialogue forum into a strategic bloc that directly challenges the G7's dominance. The creation of the New Development Bank, NDB, is proof of this. Based in Shanghai, it funds infrastructure across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, without the harsh austerity or political conditions of the IMF or World Bank. The NDB's loans are transparent, its interest rates fair, and its decision-making democratic. For many developing nations, it represents hope, the chance to build without being bound. At the 2023 BRICS Summit, the message was unmistakable: the future is plural, not singular. New members like Egypt, Ethiopia, and Saudi Arabia joined, expanding the bloc's influence across continents. The addition of African states wasn't symbolic, it was strategic. It showed that the multipolar world will not emerge from theory, but from partnership. Inside BRICS, discussions are already underway about creating a common settlement currency, a system to replace the U.S. dollar in trade between member nations. If realized, it could shift global finance forever. Imagine a future where African oil is traded in a BRICS currency, Indian pharmaceuticals are paid for in digital rupees, and Chinese infrastructure deals are settled without a single U.S. bank involved. That's not just economic diversification, that's liberation. And make no mistake, the West knows it. The rise of BRICS isn't about aggression, it's about independence. It's about rewriting the rules so that every nation, whether in Africa, Asia, or Latin America, has equal access to opportunity. For nearly 80 years, the United States sat at the summit of global power. Its dollar ruled trade, its military encircled the planet, and its media defined what the world should believe. But history teaches one unchanging lesson: no empire lasts forever. The cracks began quietly. When Washington weaponized its own currency, freezing reserves, cutting nations off from SWIFT, it sent a message louder than any speech. The dollar can no longer be trusted as neutral ground. Countries began looking for escape routes, and those routes led east, toward Beijing, New Delhi, and Moscow, and south, toward Africa. Then came the wars, sanctions, and double standards. Many nations watched as the U.S. defended democracy in words but undermined it in action. They saw how one country could invade another and call it security, while others doing the same were branded rogues. The hypocrisy was no longer hidden. Social media made it visible to billions. Meanwhile, America's industrial base eroded. Factories moved abroad, supply chains shifted, and debt ballooned to unprecedented levels. While the U.S. focused on short-term profits and political polarization, Asia and Africa focused on production and partnership. Today, we live in a transformed landscape. The dollar's dominance is weakening as local currency trade expands. Western media influence is challenged by African, Asian, and Middle Eastern voices online. Even U.S. allies pursue their own policies instead of Washington's script. This is what political scientists call de-dollarization and strategic autonomy. But on the streets of Lagos, Nairobi, Delhi, and Beijing, people call it something simpler: freedom of choice. For the first time in modern history, power is diffused, not centralized. Technology no longer belongs to one country. Information flows through every smartphone. Energy isn't dictated by a single pipeline. Renewables, African oil, Russian gas, and Asian innovation compete side by side. This new balance doesn't erase the West, it merely ends its monopoly. The U.S. remains powerful, but no longer unchallenged. Washington's sanctions now push nations closer together instead of apart. Its tariffs drive others to create independent supply chains. Every attempt to isolate a rival only accelerates the rise of alternatives. Look at what's happening right now. Africa trading with India and China in local currencies. Russia and China creating payment systems independent of Visa and MasterCard. Gulf nations pricing oil in yuan. Each act may seem small, but together they dismantle the pillars of unipolarity. Multipolarity isn't about replacing one empire with another, it's about balance. It's about cooperation instead of coercion, respect instead of dominance. Africa, India, China, and Russia understand that no nation can stand alone in the 21st century. Climate change, pandemics, energy transitions, these challenges demand collaboration in a multipolar world. Africa's minerals power Asia's factories. Asia's technology builds Africa's cities. Russia's energy fuels industry, and all four exchange culture, innovation, and security on equal footing. It's not a dream, it's already happening. As the sun rises over the African savanna, the skylines of Shanghai, Mumbai, and Moscow glow in unison. This is not coincidence, it's history in motion. A world once ruled from a single capital is now guided by many voices. The multipolar age has begun. For centuries, power was hoarded. Decisions about Africa were made in London, Paris, or Washington. But now, decisions about Africa are made in Africa. Partnerships are negotiated with Africa, not for Africa. India brings innovation. China brings infrastructure. Russia brings resources and energy security. Africa brings the future. Together, these forces form something unstoppable, a coalition of destiny that no sanctions, propaganda, or intimidation can suppress. This is not about replacing the United States. It's about restoring balance to the world. It's about ending the idea that one country should dictate the choices of 8 billion people. The unipolar order was built on control. The multipolar order is built on cooperation. And in this new world, respect is the true currency. As BRICS expands, as African economies rise, as Asia innovates, we are witnessing the greatest realignment of power since World War II. The U.S. dollar's supremacy fades, but new currencies and digital payment systems flourish. Western think tanks speak of losing influence, but ordinary citizens speak of gaining independence. For the first time in generations, the developing world isn't looking outward for permission. It's looking inward for purpose. A farmer in Kenya can trade directly with a company in India. A startup in Nigeria can collaborate with engineers in Shanghai. A student in Ghana can attend a Russian university online. A young creator in Johannesburg can tell their story to the world, uncensored, unfiltered, unafraid. That is the power of multipolarity. And that's where we come in. Here on Eazicho Africa, we don't just report the headlines. We decode history as it happens. We amplify Africa's voice in this global transformation. We explore how India, China, and Russia are working with the continent, not over it. Because make no mistake, the world's future will be written in African ink, powered by Asian technology, and defended by global unity. And you, watching this right now, are part of that story. So, the next time someone says the world is falling apart, Tell them the truth. It's not falling apart. It's falling into place. The unipolar moment is over. The multipolar world is here. And Africa is not at the margins, it's at the center. This is not the end of an era. It's the beginning of one. A future where no single nation owns the world's destiny, because we all share it. This is Iazicho Africa, your home for global insight, truth, and transformation. If you believe in a balanced world, in a future where Africa leads alongside Asia and beyond, like, share, and subscribe. Because the next revolution isn't happening in secret. It's happening right here, in front of our eyes, and together, we are the echo of the new world.